The I Ching is the most remarkable, most enduring oracle in existence. Its origins are shrouded in mystery. It is quite possible that the earliest vestiges of the I Ching are approximately 5,000 years old.
Chinese legend says the Emperor Fu Xi invented the I Ching around 2800 BC, a century before the pyramids were built in Egypt. The I Ching is usually used for personal fortune-telling. You ask a question of the text, then you toss 3 coins. If they are mostly tails, you draw a straight line. If they are mostly heads, you draw a broken line. This is repeated 6 times until the questioner has a series of 6 straight and broken lines called a hexagram.
There's 64 possible combinations, and there are little texts appended to each of these hexagrams, and that gives you some reading on the future.
The questioner looks up his hexagram in an index and finds a prophecy.
The remarkable thing about the I Ching is that if you pose a question to this oracle, you will discover that you receive an answer that is astoundingly appropriate to the question being asked.
Advice can range from relationships to travel to career guidance. But scientific rationalists counter that the evocative language of the I Ching only makes it seem accurate.
Sometimes this is called the P.T. Barnum effect, where you provide something for everybody. So it's a vague, general statement. I see you as somebody who is outgoing and extroverted, yet at times you can be introverted. It's total nonsense. There's nothing psychic going on at all.
Despite the opinion of skeptics, the 5,000-year-old I Ching remains a bestseller. Used by fortune tellers, psychotherapists, and Shanghai business tycoons. But only in the past decades has the ancient I Ching become an oracle of doom. The story begins with a controversial researcher named Terence McKenna.
Terence McKenna was kind of the subcultural Timothy Leary of the 1980s and 90s. He did these kind of mathematical graphings with the I Ching and turned it into a kind of map of time.
Before his death in 2000, McKenna noticed an unrecognized pattern in the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. The 6 lines and 64 possible combinations can be expressed as a ratio of change in each hexagram and plotted on a graph. When McKenna mapped that graph over a timeline, he found intriguing correlations that matched all 4,000 years of recorded history. His graph starts with the I Ching's creation in China's Shang dynasty, the same period as the dawn of civilization in other parts of the world. The 64 hexagrams repeat 64 times over history. McKenna called his theory time wave zero. The highs and lows of his I Ching graph seem to have accurately predicted the fall of the Roman Empire, the discovery of the New World, and the world wars of the 20th century. But the strangest thing of all was that McKenna's timeline came to an end on one specific date, December 21st, 2012.
It was later that McKenna discovered that the Mayan civilization ended its calendar at the point of 2012. He felt there was something truly prophetic about that date.
Did the I Ching from ancient China and the Mayan calendar from medieval Mexico independently arrive at the same date for doomsday?
What I feel is particularly remarkable about the current time is that we have a number of prophecies that all seem to imply that something is going to happen in the 21st century. The time scale of some of the traditional South American prophecies is the same as the time scale of the medieval Welsh prophecies of Merlin.
The wizard Merlin, best known from tales of King Arthur. But that was the Merlin of fiction. The real Merlin was much darker, with prophecies that foretold the end of the world. There is an ancient oracle of doom who is now almost forgotten. His name, Merlin. We know Merlin as the wise wizard in the pointy hat from Legends of King Arthur. But the historic Merlin was very different from the popular image. In fact, in the Middle Ages, Merlin was considered one of Europe's greatest oracles. His prophecies include terrorist attacks, global warming, and planetary catastrophes, possibly in our own time.
There are two significant medieval texts that deal with Merlin. In fact, they're so significant that before they were written down, there was very little about Merlin.
The legends of Merlin have their birthplace in ancient England. The prophecies were published in 1135 AD, but were based on texts that dated from the 5th century. These texts describe Merlin as a Celtic shaman, half man, half demon. The name Merlin is an English version of an older Welsh name, Merthyn. The ancient Welsh called him Merthyn Wilt, Merlin the Wild, a half-crazed man of the forest. But was Merlin a character of legend, or did he really exist?
It seems very likely that the word Merlin, or Merthyn, was a title rather than an individual's name. And researchers and writers have felt that there were probably at least 2, maybe 3 historical persons who had that title. Merlin was a title for a mad prophet in the woods.
The prophecies of Merlin seem to predict events that happened centuries in the future. 1,000 years before anyone knew that America existed, Merlin predicted the first American colony by name.
A colony shall be founded by virgins in virgin soil.
Merlin also predicts the British victory over Napoleon at Waterloo and foresees the horrors of the Nazi Holocaust. But it is Merlin's prophecies for the 20th century that are the most astonishing.
At that time, shall a man standing on the shore of England speak instantly to a man standing on the shore of France through a speaking stone. And it makes me think of the cell phone and quartz technology, our little speaking stones that we hold.
But then, Merlin's prophecies turn darker. First, he foresees a disaster in Great Britain.
The 7 seas shall discharge itself, and the river burn for 7 months. Fishes shall die in the heat thereof, and shall grow multiple tails.
The Severn is where the nuclear power stations are sited in Britain. So it would seem to us that this is a description of meltdown.
The prophecies get worse.
London shall mourn for the death of 20,000, and the river Thames shall turn to blood.
Is this a reference to a terrorist attack? Merlin goes on to foresee a more global problem.
The seas shall rise up in the twinkling of an eye. The winds shall fight together with a dreadful blast.
A lot of these predictions of submerging sound very much like modern scientific predictions of global warming. They start to look a bit like these channeled prophecies.